Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If I could ask everybody to go ahead and have this started. I am District 2 Councilman Dino Bonanno, and we have our council chairman, Scott Walker, who is also with us here tonight. I don't have any elected officials here, do I? Thank you all for participating in tonight's meeting. Before we start, I'm going to take a moment to address some of the comments that have been stated about this. Can y'all hear me? Okay. Address some of the comments that have been stated on social media about this study. First and foremost, the reason why this study took place is in this very council chambers here on the West Bank. We've had numerous people come up and address the council about, why is it that we don't have the same level of service on the West Bank that we have on the East Bank. The East Bank had 4 men on the truck. Third District has now 3 men on the truck, and many of the stations have 1. First, I want to tell y'all, our West Bank firefighters do more with less than any are seen. They're some of the best departments. They serve us well. I served with them during Katrina and many other events, and they do a great job. However, I will tell you this. Am you hear me? How was that? Everybody can hear me? Yes. Good deal. So part of the issue we have always had on the West Bank is a mill of property taxes on the West Bank doesn't generate half of what a mill on the East Bank generates. So the departments of the East Bank have a lot more money to employ for resources and manpower, et cetera. So that's one of the big challenges we've always had on the West Bank. So we embarked upon this study to begin to look at what can we do holistically as a parish, as a fire department, all, to address any issues we have with respect to manpower, equipment, stations, et cetera. The biggest takeaway I want y'all to know is none of this study that you're going to hear about tonight is written in concrete. This is just the release of the information. No decisions have been made whatsoever. And in fact, to be very clear, this council cannot decide to consolidate. Only the voters of this parish can vote to consolidate. So at the end of the day, you, the voters, have to say whether you want to do this. Not us, the council. It's not our decision. It's yours if, in fact, it happens. More importantly, this is a very slow process. This would be a 3 to 5 year process. It wouldn't happen overnight. So we start today with the beginning of a recommendation from a nationwide consultant who has done consolidations all across this country. He's looked at all the data. He's going to give you the data tonight. He's going to tell you what his recommendations are. Again, none of that has been adopted. None of it has been written in stone. We met with our chiefs and our presidents of the fire departments earlier today to begin working on that process going forward. So this is just to give you, the public, a snapshot of the data that this consultant has developed for us. Very competent consultant, like I said, has done this all before. But none of it has been decided on or adopted by this council or anyone so far. It's a process that we're going to move forward to look at to be able to provide you, the public, better level of protection. Not that you're not getting a great level of protection today, but we all, myself, being a firefighter, and all the chiefs, acknowledge that going forward in the future, we don't have the volunteers we once had. It's going to become a pressing issue that it's better to address now than 5 years from now. So we're all going to work together collectively to address this issue as we go forward. And there's ways we can do this. Look, at the end of the day, I don't know whether we can afford to consolidate. That's the next step in this process. We have not taken this study because we're not finalizing it. We want to take your comments tonight, the comments and concerns of our fire chiefs, and take that and address the plan, amend the plan to come back with a final version and say, look, we've addressed everybody's comments, and begin to work together collectively with our fire chiefs, with our citizens, to say, okay, how do we move this forward to make sure we don't have a problem down the line, that we're addressing our manpower, our equipment issues, et cetera. And we've already had, the chiefs themselves have already had a lot of internal discussions about how to address that, and looking collectively at the West Bank as a whole, how to increase manpower by putting different mechanisms in place instead of looking at things as just districts. So you have the 4th District, which is Lafitte Crown Point, 5th District, which is Terrytown, the 6th District, which is Harvey, the 8th district, which is Marrero Harvey, and you have the 7th district, which is Avondale, Wagaman, and Bridge City. So all of those are separate districts. And when I say districts, they get rated as a separate district. So each one has to have ladder trucks and rescue trucks and so many manpower. They got to test their own hydrants and ladders, but they do that separately and not as a whole unit. So we're kind of looking at, okay, how do we do that as a whole unit going forward? So a couple of ground rules for tonight. You're going to have a presentation by our consultant, and then we're going to open the floor up for, hopefully, for comments. I hope they have the microphone fixed by then so we can pass it around the room. And we want to hear from you, the public, what your comments, what your concerns are. And we're going to take that and bring that back to the consultants and hopefully address that in the final iteration of the study. I wanted to caution you. We are here tonight to talk about this study and this study only. We're not entertaining any questions about any other fire departments, any pay plans, anything else but the West Bank Consolidation Study. If you insist on going outside of that, then you'll be asked by the police department to leave. Everybody understand that? All right, thank you. So I'm going to turn that over. We have our two consultants who did this study for us. It's Chief Craig Haig and his assistant Joe Hine. So they're both here to go over the data they collected and what it means to them. Please keep in mind, this does not mean your fire departments are not doing their job. By far. They're doing a great job. They always have. This is just a snapshot of what we look like today and where we hope to go in the future with working with cooperation with our fire departments. I also want to recognize, just joined us is Councilwoman at Large, Jennifer Rankin, has also joined us. Chief Craig, you mic'd up?
Yes, sir.
Good to go.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Well, good evening. I appreciate all of you being here and being interested in what's going on with your fire service. I and my firm were fortunate that I think we were fortunate to get the opportunity to come and take a look at your fire service here in the West Bank, try and make some evaluations based on the data, based on comparison to national standards, and then make some recommendations on what you might be able to do, not just today, but to look at what you need to do to potentially sustain your organization and ensure that you're going to have quality fire service moving forward. So I just before I start, I want to reiterate what the councilman said. You have some pretty incredible fire service personnel that serve the West Bank, and I have a concern as it relates to staffing. That's probably my primary concern as it relates to the number of folks that are riding the fire trucks, responding to the calls. I think it's two things. I think it's one, it becomes a safety issue for them doing the job, and I think it becomes a safety issue for those of you that on the worst day of your life pick up the phone and call 911 and need some assistance. So staffing is foremost in my mind to say, okay, how do we address that? How do we fix that in a ever-changing, challenging emergency service world? So I'll start with that. I also want to reiterate that the data or the information I want to share with you tonight is based on data that we were able to collect from our fire service entities in the West Bank. All right. So we pulled the data in, we analyzed it, and we pulled the report together. So what I'm going to show you is going to be very, very specifically data driven, and I'll explain to you where we came up with some of the recommendations we did based on that data. But I just want you to understand as we roll into this, you have some incredible folks that are serving this community, and so it's how do we support them the best way that we possibly can. Does that make sense? So let's start, and I'll show you what it is that we've got and some of the work that we walk through. So the scope of work for us, what we were asked to do is to evaluate the feasibility and the advisability Those are two different scenarios. The feasibility and the advisability of consolidating the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th fire districts into a single Jefferson Parish Fire Department. So that was the scope of the work that we were asked to do, and that's what we tried to do and do it competently for you. I want to share what I would argue is one of the common myths that roll out of any conversation as it relates to consolidation. Oftentimes I get calls and leadership in a community or a district or a parish or a county, whatever it would be, they say, we want to consolidate because we believe that consolidation is going to save us money. And I will tell you that that is not how it plays out. Consolidation will make you more efficient. It will address some of the challenges that we face as a small entity by becoming a bigger entity. But for those who say, well, they're doing it based on the fact that they're trying to save money, that is absolutely a myth because it doesn't work out that way. And the consolidations that are taking place across the fire service world right now, if they recognize this up in the beginning and they say, okay, we're going to move forward with consolidation because we're about the efficiency of the service, the excellence of the service that we provide, they're going to be successful. If they go after it because it's based on a dollar and a dollar reduction, it's just flat not going to work. So I want to make sure that you understand how that plays out from the very beginning. So let's look a little bit at what we've got going on in the fire service in the West Bank. You know, and I know that not everybody I've got in the room is firefighters, and I appreciate that. So I build this out just so you can kind of see what it is that we've got and understand it fully. So I'll walk through this with you. So in the 4th district, that's the Lafitte area, they've got about, and remember these were 2023 numbers, so there's been some modifications and some changes in call volume and even how some of the departments operate as it relates to staffing. But at that time, about 6,800 residents out there. They operate out of 4 fire stations, and the 4th district runs about 214 calls a year. If we look at the 5th district, that's the Terrytown area, residents, about 42,000 is what their population is. They run out of 4 fire station, answering 745 calls back at that time. Their call volume has skyrocketed. They're much, much busier today than what they were when we pulled this data and started this study. The 6th district is Harvey, about 28,000 residents, 4 fire stations running about 700 calls. And I believe, I don't have the exact number, but Scott's here, right? I believe that their numbers have jumped up pretty significantly as well. Over in the 7th district, you've got Avondale, Bridge City, Herbert Wallace, Live Oak Manor, and 9 Mile Point fire departments, 22,000 residents, 6 fire stations in that area, about 636 calls. And then the 8th district, where you've got Marrero Harvey, Marrero Estelle, and Marrero Ragusa, about 70,000. This is your big population base right here in the 8th district. 9 fire stations, doing about 1,700 calls, and I know that number is up significantly. So if we look at what I had to work with when I did the study back in 2023, I've got 11 separate independent fire companies, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. 11 separate independent fire companies, population of about 171,000 people, 27 fire stations, and they were doing just over 4,000 runs. So that kind of lays out the stage, if you will, as it relates to these organizations and how they operate. So what did we do to try and wrap our arms around, try to understand what you're dealing with in this community? Well, my team, and Joe Heim is with me this evening, one of my team members, as well as several others. We came into the parish. We spent about 3 weeks actually on site here in the community, moving around, looking at fire stations, interviewing folks, talking to folks, looking at fire stations and equipment, looking at your assets. We were at the 911 center. We were at the neighboring fire departments that are in the West Bank, but wouldn't be part of a potential change. So we tried to pull as much information from those folks as we possibly could, as well as apply our skill set of looking to see what it is that we've got. We evaluated a number of different areas. We looked at HR issues as an example. Although they're called volunteer fire companies, the reality is that there are very few volunteers that are actually left in the fire company. Most of these departments they're paid departments. And so they've got some volunteers. Some of them are still active. Some of them are still continuing to function. That should not ever go away as long as you can continue to support it. If you've got volunteers that want to be part of the volunteer or be part of the fire companies, you need to do that, and you need to process and continue to move that along as far as you can. The problem is that globally in the fire service today, we're seeing a massive decline in overall volunteer firefighters. So and your folks have addressed it by hiring paid personnel. But I want you to know that decline in volunteers in your volunteer fire companies has got nothing to do with the West Bank volunteer fire companies. It's got to do with what we are seeing as a global fire service. And I would say those of you who are involved in civic organizations, your volunteerism in the civic organizations is reduced as well. So it's just a global challenge that we deal with. So when you hire paid personnel, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes along with that. And most of that is going to be human resource driven, and it's ever changing. It's challenging to stay on top of the rules and regulations and the changes in laws. So we looked at that to see where your organizations were at. We tried really, really hard to gain an understanding of the PIAL, it's called. That's your rating system that evaluates the fire departments to determine what their capabilities are so that they can make a recommendation to your insurance providers as to how much you're going to be billed for insurance or what your insurance premiums are going to be set at. So we tried to look at that. We had numerous meetings with the Inspector General's office. They were running a simultaneous study. It had nothing to do with us, but because we were both here at the same time, we had some crossover conversations. And then tons and tons and tons of emails back and forth, phone calls, conversations with the leadership team to make sure that we were getting good information. So that kind of lays out our methodology. I will tell you, in any study like this, there are limitations, and I'll share them with you because they're important for us to be thinking about as we move forward to look at what's going to be the future. One, I will just say to you that data collection was a challenge for us. When you take 11 independent fire companies and you say, give me your data, all of 11 of those independent fire companies collect data just a little bit differently. And when you try to line that up, it becomes really, really hard to say, let's compare this against this because it's not the same in how they track it. So we did our absolute best to try and collect and do a side-by-side comparison, but it was a challenge. We had some challenges working with the rating bureau for the insurance. They didn't necessarily want to release how they do things. It's proprietary to them, which was difficult for us because we wanted to be able to say, well, we think if you would consolidate, here's what your new rating will be. So we worked through that and we were able to solve that. We had some challenges where we wanted to interview some senior parish leadership. We just couldn't pull that off due to a number of different issues. And I will say to you, there are a number of legal issues that continue to exist. Things like, well, what happens to the VFC contracts with the parish, fund balances, equipment. So there's a number of different things that are still hanging out there that we would need to answer if the decision is, well, let's move forward and consider consolidation. If the decision is, well, let's not move forward and consider consolidation, we want to look at some other options, okay, that's great too. But it is, what's the best move, what's the right way to go? And we continue to answer some of this stuff as we move along. Now, what I want to stress to you folks, and I want you to hear me, if you miss everything else I say, hear what I'm going to say right now. If you get this 170-some page report and you dig into it, you're gonna read some things that you go, wow, that's kind of critical of our volunteer fire department, or that's kind of critical of our fire company. When you do a study of this nature, if we came into any of your organizations and we looked, or you hired some other firm to come in and look, none of us get it exactly right all the time. And when you get an outside party to look at it, a lot of times that's where our growth comes from, because they point out, hey, look, this is where we're at, and we need to make some modifications. So what I want you to hear is if you were to read that document, you might say, wow, that was kind of harsh. It's not what the intent is to be, all right? I think you have really great folks, but I have to point out what it is that I see. So this, I think, is really, really important. This report, this work we did, it is absolutely 100% not a reflection of the current firefighters' dedication and service to this parish. No way. Here's what it is. It is a reflection of the changing societal interests and the lack of interest in folks being volunteers. It's absolutely that. And we look at that, and that's what drives a lot of this. It is a reflection of the fact that we have increased and increasing public demand for services. People want services, and we're the people that solve those problems in many cases. And that continues to increase and go up. It is a reflection of the need to offer competitive pay and benefits to your full-time firefighters. You got to pay them well. You got to give them good benefits. That's just part of the deal. And if you don't, they're not going to stay with your organization, and they're going to go someplace else. And all of the money and time and energy you poured into recruiting, hiring, onboarding, and training and developing is going to go to somebody else. So you got to take care of your folks. That's part of it. And it is a reflection of some of the human resource management things that the VFCs have been trying to manage, because they're not big enough to have their own HR departments to ensure the I's are dotted and T's are crossed and managed exactly right. We were able to point out, here's a couple things you need to work on here, a couple things that you need to fix. But as I said, that gets really challenging when you start to look at that stuff. And they, I will argue, are doing the best they can with what they got. All right? So, no fully, what we're going to talk about is not, it is absolutely not a reflection on your people. You got good people, and they give you everything they got. They really do. So, where are we at? Well, I think I'll start with an overview, and then we'll roll into a little bit of some of the specifics. So when I look at this overview aspect, it's important for you to know, as the residents here, your volunteer fire companies, they are independent private organizations, and they're under contract to the parish. They're not parish employees. They're not parish fire department. They're not government entities. They're independent, and they're contracted. And we see that in some places across the country. We talked about a little bit just a second ago. Most of these volunteer fire companies, although they got volunteer in their name, their volunteer membership, their volunteer roster, the people that are interested in volunteering is down. And I know a lot of them have worked really, really hard to increase that, but it is super challenging. And if you look at what we're seeing with other agencies that we work with across the country, those numbers aren't coming up. It's a fact where we're at right now. And when I talked to these individuals, the consensus opinion of the VFCs is that the volunteer programs probably should be discontinued to the point of, if we can't get them and we continue to focus on getting them and we can't get them, then we're going to have to focus our attention on the full-time staffing. And so they know, they understand where they're at, they understand the realization of the challenges that they face. So let's talk about a couple specific categories here that we were able to identify in the report. Let's look at personnel as an example. Couple things that I think are pretty important for you to understand as it relates to your VFCs. Since they're private organizations, they're not eligible for the same benefits that you would get as a government employee. Okay? And now back in 2023, when we were looking at these numbers, we had firefighters that were making someplace between minimum wage and about $20 an hour. That's where they were at. Some of them have been able to increase, so they're in a little better position today. The insurance benefits, they vary by the volunteer fire companies, and they vary based on what their ability to pay is. So that exists out there. One of the big things is that, and this really impacts your young folks that are in your fire companies, and I think ultimately it impacts some of your recruitment and your retention, is the fact that your folks can't participate in the firefighters' retirement fund at the state. So some of the volunteer fire companies have been successful in putting 401ks and similar things like that in, and working with those firefighters to help them put away for retirement. But the fact remains that because of how they're structured, they just can't get themselves into a position where they can be part of the state retirement, and that's a super big deal. It's reported that there's about 200 firefighters working in the West Bank. I will tell you, that was really, really challenging for us to figure out, and here's the reason. There's a whole bunch of those folks that work at one department, and they'll do a 24-hour shift at one department, and then they'll work the next day at another fire department, which they need to do that to make ends meet. They need to do that to take care of their families. But when we said, okay, how many firefighters do we really have? Where do they all belong? And I'm laying rosters down next to each other, and I'm trying to line them up. It is really, really challenging to figure out how many people we actually got over here in the parish. The number reported is 200. I don't think you got 200. You may be filling 200 spots, but I don't think you got 200 folks. And we talked about some of those HR issues. We were able to point out that some of them need to be cleaned up, and to the credit, as I've talked to chiefs today, they were able to fix a lot of that stuff. And when you do a study like this, it's not so much about what recommendations come out of the study in the end, but oftentimes it's what we learned from the study and we were able to fix it. And these guys have been involved and engaged in fixing some things since we did the work, which I think should be applauded. So staffing is, and I alluded to that just when we started, staffing is a real challenge for you guys. There are some standards out there, the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA as most of us refer to it. They've established some standards that they say you need to have X number of firefighters responding. They've broken it out by single-family residents. They've broken it out by apartments, commercial buildings, high-rises, how many folks you need to put on the scene to be able to do the job. Your West Bank folks, as good as they are and as hard as they try, they are understaffed as it relates to having enough folks to be able to get on the scene and effectively do the work. They do it. They try, which is a danger in and of itself because of the physical demand that they're expending. But simply based on the understaffing that they have, they're not compliant with these standards. And they're good on response time. They'll get on the scene quickly, and they'll meet the NFPA standards as it relates to response time, but they won't meet the numbers as it relates to staffing. And so whatever happens, whether you consolidate, whether you don't consolidate, whether you come up with another option, I think the key aspect taken away is staffing is one of the major issues that's got to be addressed, if that makes sense. So if we move away from staffing, let's talk about fire stations just a little bit. You have 27 fire stations. When we did this study back in 2003, there were 28. One has been since shut down since then. You're at 27 stations right now. The challenge that you've got with your fire stations is that because of the district system you have, where this is the 5th district, and this is the 4th district, and this is the 8th district, because of how those districts are set up, your fire stations may be appropriately located based on that district. But if you say, okay, we're going to do away with the districts and we're going to go to a West Bank Jefferson Parish Fire Department, those fire stations, some of them are not in the right location to be able to effectively get to where you need to get to in the right amount of time, okay? The second thing is some of those fire stations are beautiful and are brand new facilities, well laid out, well thought out, well put together, and some of them are in pretty rough shape. And so that becomes a challenge then to say, okay, well, if you're going to consolidate, what are we going to do? Where are we going to operate out of, and how's that going to lay out? And we've got some recommendations. I don't know, and I'll share it with you when we get there and look at stations. I don't know that we got it exactly right. This is where you need to get with your folks on the ground. Here, I'm saying here's your mapping, but we got to get with folks on the ground and make sure we got it right. So we'll talk about that in a second. But your fire stations are in various states of repair. Apparatus-wise, you in the West Bank have a lot of rolling stock. If we look at this, 31 engines, 15 aerial devices, 39 SUVs, pickups, things like that. You've got 8 rescue squads, and then 21 things that I classified as other. They would be a boat, or they would be a large diameter hose vehicle you have, or it may be light towers, or various things like that. So you have a ton of rolling stock here in the parish. Now, based on your model of districts, that rolling stock is important because that's how you get rated. But if you said, okay, we're going to eliminate the districts and we're going to become a consolidated West Bank department, then the rating system changes. All right, and you may not need what's up here on the screen because that would be a change. So that's one of the things that would have to be looked at as you move forward. Now, I'm not going to go over this at all. This is just something that appears in the report. We wanted to look at what's the millage, what's the valuation, what are the numbers, how much money do we have coming in, and we looked at everybody on the West Bank, as well as we looked at the East Bank Consolidated, because we just wanted to know those numbers to see where we're at. And so we pulled that. Those numbers have changed since I did the original work. So it's worthless for us to spend a lot of time looking at some of those numbers because they're going to be in a different category than what they were when I did the study 2 years ago. Here's the recommendations, and this is where we as a team have come forward and said, well, we think this is the best move for you. All right. We think that consolidation of the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th district to create a Jefferson Parish West Bank Fire Department, whatever that's called, whatever it's named, doesn't matter to us. We think that makes a lot of sense as it relates to addressing some of these challenges. We excluded the 4th district because of two things. They're further down. They're in a different situation. They're in a rural operation. They do a lot of unhydrated work. They got to haul water in, and their chief and leadership at the time said, "We're still doing okay getting volunteers." So I think if you're still doing okay and you still got volunteers coming in the door, then maybe you don't need to jump in on this. But because the scenario would be scalable, if at some point they needed to come in or they wanted to come in, I see no reason why that couldn't occur. You just have to figure out what it looks like. So we think that this tentatively makes sense. The question always comes about is like, well, how fast does this occur? And when you make a recommendation, you say, I think you ought to consolidate. I think it makes sense. You get folks that go, okay, in the next 6 months, we're going to be consolidated. In the next 6 months, we're going to do this. That's crazy talk, all right? I would say in the absolute best scenario, it's 3 years, probably more realistic 5 years. And to really put it all together and get it moving along, it may be further out than that. So this is not a quick scenario if you decided, I want to consolidate. Does that make sense? In fact, slower is better. Slower is always going to be your better part. There's a ton of moving parts. You need to take your time. Now, if you said, yes, we think it makes sense, we want to move forward with a consolidation, a couple critical steps go along with this. One is that you got to hire a fire chief. Now, that fire chief may come from inside the organization. You may have folks here. You got some good folks. They may say, hey, I'm up for the challenge. They make application, and they're hired. And then that fire chief, their responsibility then is to shepherd the process from the beginning all the way through. If you don't have anybody in-house that's interested in doing that, then you're going to have to go outside. You're going to have to hire a fire chief from outside. But when you go outside to hire a fire chief, you need to make sure that you're finding the right fire chief, because we could really mess things up if we bring in the wrong player. And I would also say, not only do we need to find the right player, but we need to find a player who's going to be here and bring some tenure to the organization so that they can be here to shepherd this thing for a long time, because it's going to take a long time to get it where it needs to be. Step two in the process, the way I view it, is that we then need to, once we get the fire chief on board, that's when we need to start onboarding the staff that is currently here as West Bank firefighters and bring them into the employment of the Jefferson Parish Fire Department, West Bank Fire Department, whatever name it comes into, but it is they would become government employees under the parish. Once that occurs, I think the next step is, and I've thought about this a lot, I think the best move is that you consolidate one district at a time, okay? And we've bounced around a bunch of junk, but in my mind, I think you do the 7th district first, then you go to the 8th, and then we pick up the 5th and 6th. That may not be right. There may be changes that need to be done. There may be modifications that are made as that all lays out. And we need your expertise to help figure that out. But here's the key. By going step by step, slowly, you test a little. You learn from that testing of your consolidated aspects. You make modifications based on what you learned, and then you move forward. So it's a slow and steady process. It's not a knee-jerk reaction, because when you're messing with emergency services, you cannot break the emergency services while you're in the process of coming up with a solution. And oftentimes, we get really excited and we break something while we're trying to fix something. And we don't want to do that. And you can't afford that here. You need these folks to be here and serve you, and to serve you well. So we got to be slow and deliberate. But this is kind of what's in my mind at the moment as where we need to go. Now, fire stations. Let's talk about fire stations. When you talk about, well, we don't need all of our fire stations, that creates huge heartburn as it relates to, you're going to close my fire station. So let me explain to you exactly what I did, or what my team did, and explain also what needs to occur next. So what we did is we said, if the districts go away, and we took our GIS mapping system and we said, if the districts go away, what I want is, I want to know using existing fire station locations, I want to say, what fire stations do I need to have open with folks in them ready to respond, staffed appropriately, with an overlay of a drive time or a response time that will comply with the NFPA standard. That was the question I asked my team to build for me. So we built a model in which, all things being equal, based on what I just said, I feel pretty confident that based on my data, my computer data, keep that in mind, my computer data, I think you're in a 16 to 17 station scenario. Here's what's got to overlay on top of that. What's got to overlay on top of that is the knowledge and the wisdom of the folks that are in the service that say, well, that's not going to work because I got train tracks that go through here. And my computer it knows the train tracks, but it doesn't know how often that train track is blocked. It doesn't know how often your bridge is up and you can't get across the canal. You guys know that information. So that's where we utilize their expertise to say, maybe it's not 17, maybe it's 20. I don't think they're going to say it's 14, but we got to look at that. So you got to understand where the data comes from, and instead of going, that can't be right. Well, wait a minute. It's right based on how we applied the technology that we have. But then we got to use this technology up here to really understand what's going to be appropriate. All right. So I think that you're gonna be someplace in this range, but there are some modifications maybe need to take place. And I think frankly, if you'd move some fire stations, it's going to have a huge impact because you can put them in some better spots. But the last thing you need to do in a merger like this is come in and say, oh, we're going to build 7 or 8 new fire stations. Let's use what we got. And then as we move forward, we'll figure out what we need to do next. So this is a very, very fluid process. It's not hard and fast. It's not this is where we're at today. This is what we're going to move forward with. It's very, very fluid, and it needs to be fluid using the expertise of the folks that are heavily involved and engaged. And I just put these maps up here. For those of you that don't live this every day, here's your 5th district. You can see the red dots of your fire stations, the 6th district, the 7th district, the 8th district, where they're all located at. So that's just there for you to take a look at. Now, what did I do as it relates to staffing and staffing recommendations? I used those fire station numbers to put staffed fire apparatus in the fire stations. And what staffing number I worked off of is I was after meeting on a residential structure fire, 17 folks on the scene within an 8-minute response time to get all of them there. So what I did is I said I need to have 3 as a minimum on every fire truck. That's your minimum staffing, and I believe from the safety standpoint that's where you're at. So what we built out is we just said, okay, if we go to these 16 stations based on my map, and remember what I told you as it relates to the mapping process. We said, okay, here's where our engines will be at. We put in 3 ladder companies in the area, and we put in 3 chief officers. So what that actually translates out to is you'd have 13 engines, You'd have a quint, which is a ladder with a pump on it. Okay. You've got 2 ladder companies. You've got 1 heavy rescue. I think that this in the West Bank, this is an essential piece of equipment to be staffed. That's really your manpower unit that's responding to make up your numbers. And then you've got your chiefs that are going to respond and overall manage the scene. Using these numbers based on that station scenario I've got, that gets us to 213 sworn firefighters. So that was the number that we came to. Remember, I was told all the way through the process we got about 200 folks. So you say, okay, well, you consolidate and you only added a few. That's not too terribly bad. But keep in mind, I don't think you got 200. I don't know what the number is, but I don't think you have 200 because they got these folks that are playing 2 different departments. So that becomes a little bit of a challenge for us. We build out what we think based on that assignment, the number of folks and where they would be at, everybody from the fire chief to a full fire bureau that would manage your inspections and your prevention services and meet all of the standards as it relates to PIAL to ensure that your insurance ratings are where they need to be. So that would be in place with enough people to be able to make that happen. Mechanics to manage your fleet, as well as some promotable opportunities to ensure that you have supervisors in the appropriate places. So we put all of that stuff in as a recommendation to begin the overall process. And keep in mind, it is a starting point. You can run a number of different directions with this. It just gets the ball rolling to think through this. We looked at your overall insurance ratings. All of the departments that we're talking about that would potentially come together, they're rated as a Class 2. And we did our absolute best to calculate out what that new department would look like under the rating system. And we think it would be a 2. Potentially lower, potentially a 1. 1 is the best. But we don't think you're going to have any loss there, which is really pretty awesome. I will tell you what I heard repeatedly from the leadership folks, as well as the firefighters on the floor when we working through this. Really 3 very specific things. 1, whatever service is created, if we consolidate, the residents of the parish should be well served by the new organization. So as we were working to build out a model, that was absolutely in the forefront of what it is that we were thinking about. 2, fire apparatus should be adequately staffed. 1 firefighter on a rig is a problem. So we said at minimum you got 3, all right? And sometimes you're going to have 4 on a rig simply because you don't have anybody off on vacation or sick leave or things like that. And the last thing that they asked for is that the existing workforce should be retained with comparable compensation and benefits. So those were the demands. Now I will tell you, we did not do a compensation study to look at what the overall cost would be. I've had multiple firefighters say to me today after our first meeting, they said, well, tell me what my pay is going to be. Tell me what my benefits are going to be. And I said, I don't know. Here's the reason. So I'll lay it out there so that we're all aware. If we did a compensation study, do we do a study based on 60 firefighters? Or do I do a compensation study based on 200 firefighters? Because I'm going to get 2 different numbers. So I got to know what to compare to be able to bring good numbers forward so that the parish can take a look at that and analyze, can we afford it or can we move forward? So that's the work we did. What I think is where we should go from here, if it's good with the councilman, I'll open it up and I'll do my absolute best to answer any questions that I can for you. And if I can't, I'll just tell you I don't know. We didn't look at that. Does that sound okay? All right.
Real quick, we got to get the microphone. So here's how this is going to go. So Chief Robinson's going to recognize you and bring you the microphone.
Check.
And ask your question to Chief Haig. Well, no, he's going to bring you the microphone. So ground rules, Please be respectful and keep your questions and comments to this study and this study only. And Chief Hague will answer your questions.
Thank you.
Go,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Very, very much for your study. First, I want to make a long statement, then I'll ask my question.
Okay.
You made first, I want to say that we have one parish government, period. So we should have one standard of fire protection, period. Now, if I say anything that's wrong, please correct me. I read your study, and I was told it was a draft when it was not a draft. So I'm sort of familiar with your study. Also, on page 23, you've answered one of my first questions. You basically said it's going to take time.
Correct.
I think on page 29, you also put up there that the West Bank would greatly benefit from consolidation. Am I correct? A bunch of other words I saw in your study was when, or when. I don't think I've ever seen if you decide to consolidate. I don't think I saw that in your study.
No, I'm sure I used when. Yeah.
Perfect. Because it's not a question of should we consolidate, it's a question of when we do it. My other comment is I don't give a damn how much it costs. My family lives here. I live here. If we have a hurricane, we don't say how much it costs to recover. We do it. Our government primary function should be to keep us safe. Of anything else our government can do, that's number one. If you can't keep me safe, what the hell are you doing? So, let me finish if I go too long, please stop. You said something that because I came here on the 27th about 3 years ago, and I just started studying the Constitution. We're about to celebrate our 250th anniversary of this country, which I wasn't, anyway, y'all know what I was about to say. Anyway, we did that against King George because he had 27 grievances against King George. Our current Constitution has 27 amendments in it. A lot of conservatives always quote the Second Amendment. It's got 27 words in it. That's all it's got. It's one of the shortest ones. There's a few other numbers with 27. And when you said we had 27 fire stations here, and you kept talking about what we call it, West Bank such and such, no such creature. We should have one fire department just like we have on the East Bank. We should not have an East Bank and a West Bank fire department. Jefferson Parish is one parish. Even though we're split by a huge river, we, the people, should be one, and there should be one standard. So I'm preaching now, so please stop me if I keep going too long. I'm just a citizen. I'm not a fireman. I used to be a volunteer. And just like you said,
I think they'll take you back if you want to come.
no, I'm too fat and too old. And I fuss and talk too much. The other one is, you took me off my train.
I'm sorry.
The point is, it's a dire need now. I don't know if you guys consider it, but I think we should have done this when they first called you to do the study. We knew we were supposed to improve, and I know that gentleman knows we're supposed to improve. We can do a lot better. So my question is, and forget the question, I'm gonna say what I wanna say. We need to do this. We need to do it now because you say it's gonna take time, and we should have started years ago. Because one of the reasons you're saying we don't get more volunteers, they're not available. 26 years ago, we started having less babies. The birth rate went down. There's less to pick from. And our society has changed. Praise God for you guys who do volunteer. Because that's part of being a citizen. And we don't have that, we don't have civics anymore. And you guys are doing a great job volunteering. So I don't think I need to ask my question. Well, I'm gonna ask you, when in the hell can we get this done?
The best answer I can give you is that the council and will need to determine, is this a direction they want to move forward?
I don't care if I have to pay more.
And so I think you can initiate the work. You can initiate the work soon, but there's some things that have got to come through leadership first to be able to make that happen.
I'm finished.
I'm going to stay on this side first and I'll come around.
First of all, I want to say thank you for your time, for your study. I'm a lifelong resident of Wagaman. I've been serving since 2011. I have the honor to serve the people, became the assistant chief. I have a lot of concerns about this study. I've read it in its entirety, and it's very concerning that basically the 7th District is going to be the example. You want to see whether or not it passes or fails, regardless of what the situation is. If it fails, it fails. Oh, well, we made a mistake. If it passes, oh, well, look at what we did. You're not taking into account the residents of Wagaman and what they have to lose in order to, so what you say, gain. You're good at math, I'm assuming. You run a firm. 22 is larger than 9, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we have 22 personnel on duty every day right now. You want to decrease it to 9 with your study. We have 6 active stations, I'm sorry, I think 5 now, in the 7th District. You want to decrease that to 3. Running only 3 apparatus, but we got 3 manpower on it. So 3 times 3 is 9. We have 22 currently. How does that benefit anyone in my area? By decreasing the manpower. You want to talk about you can't get volunteers, you're trying to get rid of the ones that are working. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. My 1710 times, you want to go for staffing in 1710. We are surrounded by train tracks. I don't know if you personally rode around with any of the chiefs or any of my guys and got their opinion on it. It takes more than 5 minutes to get to my response zone start to my centralized station. That's 300 yards past Avondale Garden Road to Station 72 on Azalea Drive. It takes more than 5 minutes driving at normal speed. In a response with lights and sirens, we still have to obey traffic laws. We still have to watch out for our residents. It takes a long time. Now, if you decrease us to 3 and you only have 3 guys on 1 truck, we're coming from 72, what happens when we get that accident with injury on River Road? We're responding to that. Now we only have 2 other stations available. You got somebody from 76 get a structure fire in our area that we don't know if there's a train on our tracks. They have to come in. Now they're dedicated. Now we have 1 other department that can respond to any other incident within that entire side of the district. Now they get a call. Where's our manpower coming from? I seen on your study the only heavy rescue is stationed in Harvey. I don't know if you know the distance from Harvey to Wagaman, but that's a pretty long way. So if we're relying on a heavy rescue from Harvey to come to an incident in Wagaman, and you've decreased our manpower already from 22 to 9, how does that benefit anyone? It doesn't make sense to me. So where I do appreciate your study, I think it deserved a little bit more than just a ride around in a computer model and talking to some chiefs. You should have talked to the guys and the residents first.
The response that I can give to you is, remember, the districts are going away. Therefore, you're pulling from outside of your district to the closest assets that are going to be in for any particular scenario.
How far? Harvey to Wagaman is a 30-minute response. Marrero, who is the closest, because we're bypassing Oswego. Oswego is municipality. Marrero, mutually aid backing us up all the way in Wagaman, would take at least 10 to 15 minutes to respond.
I can give you my opinion, and I can answer the questions, or I'm not sure what you want. I'm not sure if you want me to give you my evaluation.
It's made for us to believe that less is more in a sense. You want to take stations away and decrease manpower, but you're putting 3 people on a truck to appease the 1710 and 1720. I get it.
Well, not 1720, because 1720 doesn't apply to you
You
guys.
know what I mean? 3 people on each truck, 3 trucks in an entire response zone. I understand the district's going away, but geographically speaking, if your computer's random models, those stations are so close together that even when we respond, again, if I get a call and they get a call and then the other one gets a call, where is our mutual aid coming from? Less is not more. No matter how you look at it. 22 people on duty every day, decreasing to 9 makes 0 sense. It's hurting the people. It's not helping.
Can I say something to you, please? Right now, we're talking about the hows. No study's perfect. There's good and bad in all of it. I think what we need to do first is decide if we're gonna consolidate. The how comes next.
Absolutely. You know,
Hey, listen, please ask your questions, allow him to answer. We can't have this back and forth or we won't accomplish anything. So if you ask a question, allow him
My
to,
only question was,
respectfully, let him answer your question, let him respectfully. I'm not saying you have to agree with it. Allow him to answer and then we'll go on to the next question. Thank you.
okay.
First, like everybody else does, thank you for coming in. Thank you for putting it together. I will, for everybody in here, Larry's right, but I want to let everybody know, we had a meeting for 2 o'clock with all the chiefs. It was a productive meeting. We got something positive out of it. Please don't not ask your questions. This affects every one of you, whether it's a hero on the truck or it's the people we serve. But I just want to say, it was a productive meeting because the production out of it was the fact that you allowed us as the chiefs to have input. And I think that's what we lacked originally. Give us a chance, because I promise you, sitting in this room today with every one of these men that's wearing a white shirt, they had great questions, great ideas, and their sole purpose was to serve you honorably. We're given that chance. Ask your questions tonight so that our council can make an educated decision what is going to best serve us. You was asked today, and I'm going to bring it up, and I got to give, is he back there with you, Timmy? There he is. He made a great question, and I wanted to tell him. He asked this gentleman, have you ever done a study in Louisiana before? Did you ever try to put together a consolidation? And the chief said, nah, this is my first one. And Timmy said, welcome to Louisiana, because you found out we're unique, didn't you? And we are. We're different than the rest of the state, much less the rest of the country. He did what his job was. I know I brought it to my community. I will continue to bring it to my community because I serve y'all. But give us a chance. I promise you, as one of 13, we're going to do what we feel is best for y'all. I'm not interested in hurting you in any way, sir. We want to do what's right. Unfortunately, I do stand with my community and say, where do we get the money from to jump into it? And Councilman Bonanno and I, in our difference of opinions at times, we have both agreed to that. Where's the money going to come from? And what I ask you one last thing, and I know it's not necessarily a question to you, is do me a favor when you're researching, and I want you to keep doing that. This isn't, fire industry issues is not exclusive to the East Bank of Jefferson Parish. It is not exclusive to the West Bank of Jefferson Parish. It's not just a pay issue or a consolidation issue. We have an industry that is being affected across this country. We don't have, volunteerism is the greatest thing about this country. Our military forces, which is the greatest military force in the world, is based off of volunteers. We don't have that. We're all trying to do the same thing. But look at it, sir. It's not just here, it's across this country. We're going to do our best. I do have faith in our chiefs of this district. Every one of them that was sitting here today has y'all best interest in mind. So just give us a chance. I promise you. They involved us. They involved us today. But don't stop asking you questions. Please, bring it all to them.
How you doing? My name is Michael Smith. I'm a firefighter, 7th District. Again, thank you for your time. I just have a simple question. I'd like to know what the motive is behind this. And you said, Councilman Bonanno said it, you said it, we're doing a great job, right? Then why are we trying to fix what isn't broken? That's my question.
I would have to defer to leadership to say, why did it come here? Why did they initiate the process? If I had to look at it and say, where are you challenged? And I don't like the word broken, but where are you challenged at? I think your challenge is based on the amount of folks that you actually have doing the job. And I think you're light. I don't think you have enough folks to effectively do some of the things that you're doing. And that creates a firefighter safety issue, and that creates a safety issue for the residents of the community.
It sounds like you're cutting instead of adding, so how does that?
I would argue that that is misinterpretation of the data that I've got. So,
No, the simple motivation is gentlemen like this gentleman here. People contact my office asking these same questions, and they're valid questions. The chiefs all acknowledge today that we have a growing problem. Lack of volunteers. I used to be a volunteer. It's a problem that's coming down the road. It may not be today, but we certainly can't wait 5 years from now and wake up and say, oh, we don't have enough people. We're not in the right places. So my challenge, we're talking with all our chiefs. We involve them in the process. Together, collectively, we have to come up with a solution. We're not saying that this is the solution. This is the starting point. This study is the starting point. So it's important, I know for myself and probably for most of my colleagues, to let you, the public, know what the study's original recommendations are so that when we work with our chiefs and come up with a solution, you understood where we started and you understood where we ended up. So listen, they're all agreed that we're going to work on this together. And as Chief Hague said, unfortunately, this is not a solution I can give you in 6 months. I don't think I can even give it to you in a year. It has to be worked on. It takes time. You can't lessen or damage our emergency response by rushing to a decision. We have to go slow and calculated to make sure that any decisions we make are not putting people's lives at risk. That's the most important thing. That's why you're not going to see any immediate changes. We're not going to make any changes without the concurrence of our chiefs. That's utmost in our goals, is to make sure that they're on board with everything we do. Again, this study is just the starting point. I told Chief Hague today, being a long-time firefighter myself and served on the West Bank and the East Bank, one rescue truck is not enough on the West Bank. I would recommend a minimum of 3. You have to have one in the West, one in the East, and one in the middle. That's what we're going to take your comments. We're going to take our comments of our chiefs and our presidents, and we're going to go back and update this study based on your comments and your concerns. Then we'll start with the next step. The next step, if I failed to mention it, is to figure out how much this costs us. Until we identify where we want to go, nobody can tell you what it's going to cost because I don't have any idea how to figure out that cost, how many people, how many trucks, how many stations. That's the next step in this process. So I hope I answered your question.
My question is that in Wagaman, we have 3 railway that block us in. If our truck is pulled out and we only have the 1 station, what's going to happen if we have something that happens in Wagaman and we have nothing on that side?
well, let me go back to what I said earlier, okay, and I'll reiterate that again. There is, when you do a study like this, we have the computer modeling option that we utilize. You have to use that. That's how you have to generate the tools to see where you're at, and it gives us the drive time, and it helps us figure that out. But the second and the absolute most critical aspect of the process is once we know that information, we sit down and we ask these questions of the folks that know the answers. The chief sitting in the back of the room, and they say things like, there's a train track that comes in here, and this is how many trains we've got, and although the computer modeling says that will work, it just won't work for us.
Because it's not uncommon for the 3 trains to be on the tracks at one time.
And so then you come back and you say, okay, so we need to then rethink our station location, and we either leave some open, or maybe this is where we relocate, but you don't do it in a vacuum. And that's what you've got to understand in the process of doing this work, is that you say, okay, here's the best information we have based on the data that we've got, but then we take the data from here, from the really smart folks that know the service, know the job, know what's going on, they overlay that on top of it, and then we get you the right answers. So none of that, hey, we're going to close your station, and this consultant said we're going to close the station, you don't need that station. No, please, that's not what we're saying. We're just saying we got to look at that to make sure we get it right. Does that make sense?
First, I want to say thank you to all the first responders in the room and your support systems that are here with you, and thank you for this study. Obviously, there's some things that can improve no matter what it is you're looking at. So you shared all the positives and all the things that are going to come out, supposedly, of the consolidation. What are some of the concerns that your study showed? I really didn't hear much talk on that. And 2, what kind of resources or considerations have been put into revamping or trying to find out why, just like you did a study to improve with the consolidation, to help with the volunteer situation?
Well, two important questions, and I'll try to make sure I cover them equally. One, the scenario of what is my concern as it relates to consolidation moving forward. If the consolidation moves forward, if you say, hey, this is the right thing to do, I am concerned about where are we going to be as it relates to staffing and ability to pay. All right? I don't know, because we really can't do the numbers yet, as the councilman said. I don't know how much it's going to cost. I have an idea in my mind where it's going to be at, but I don't know if the ability to pay lines up with the overall cost. And what I don't want to do is short you in the amount of stations, the amount of apparatus, and the amount of folks, because I made a recommendation to you that doesn't equate to your ability to pay for what it is that you need to do. And I just don't know the answer yet. Do I think that under a consolidated service, do I think you'll be served better? Yes. Do I think that it will, for the young folks in the fire service, to be able to come in, be able to have a competitive pay and benefits based on the size organization they operate in, and being able to get into the state pension system, is that a benefit for them? Absolutely, I do. I think those are some real positives. But I'm very concerned about the cost. I'm very concerned about the ability to pay, and I don't know the answer yet. To answer the second aspect of that as it relates to the volunteer scenario, I will tell you that that is probably the #1 topic that we hear across the country with fire agencies. Those that are volunteer, predominantly volunteer, maybe they've got some combination where they've got some paid folks, they've got some volunteers, and they're saying we're losing our volunteer staff. What do we need to do to fix this problem? What do we need to do to get more volunteers? How do we rectify the scenario we've got? And I will just say that it is a much more complex scenario than just to say, well, we need to do better recruitment and bring some volunteers in our local community. It's a scenario of the need for two-income families. It's a scenario of folks that have multiple demands on their family life, and they need to be moving around and doing different things. So that in the years past, where we had that expendable time that we could donate back to our communities, that time has really, 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 really reduced. And even the volunteer organizations across the country and into Canada, we do some work with them. The volunteer organizations that are excellent, that do all of the things we need to manage their volunteers, have a shrinking volunteer workforce. And so there's not any simple answer to that scenario. Now, I would argue, I love the volunteer fire service. I think we need to do everything we can to continue to recruit. I think in the organizations, you consolidate and you put together, organizations have got volunteers, we need to keep them, and we need to treat them well, and they need to continue to serve our communities as long as they possibly can. And if we can get new, great, let's bring them in the door. But to go back to what we had in the past, I just don't believe that we can pull that off. And that comes from looking at the global fire service picture. So
What are they going to do with the fire departments, the buildings? How does that look at consolidation?
we didn't address that at all. That's way down the road. So we didn't look at that at all.
This gentleman right here. I'll go right back to you, man.
Thank you. I just got a couple of quick points, probably maybe no answers to these, but I'm from Wagaman. My name's Bernard, and I live in Wagaman. And I just want to say a couple of things to help you, not to criticize you. One is, I don't know if your study considered this study, the right track study.
No.
Right. So we got one study that's going to affect another study. So this study involves, if you hadn't heard of it, it's an ongoing study to close railroad crossings in Wagaman. So if your study and your model considers a crossing that in 5 years may not be there.
We did. We absolutely considered.
Okay,
the
so you
crossings
considered closing the crossings?
We did not.
Did
We
not.
considered them to
Okay,
be
so
open.
you might want to get with the LADOTD and the USDOTD, Department of Transportation, and there's a lot of other organizations involved in doing this planning study. So that may affect your study.
I thank you for bringing that forward. We'll take a look at that.
Yeah, so that may be important. And 3 to 5 years from now, Wagaman is probably the fastest growing community in Wagaman. And, you quoted some numbers. Well, those numbers are growing as we speak. So where are we going to be in 5 years as far as residences and coverage? Also, the Wagaman area requires EMTs, and we got to rely on our firefighters, not the ambulance and folks coming from Arrero at West Jeff Hospital. They're going to be there first. If I have a heart attack, they're going to be there before anybody else. And so if they're treating me and there's another call and there's only one station and they're responding to me at one station instead of two, just don't seem, and I think Larry mentioned a couple about that. Let's see, and I guess for the council, I don't know what the East Bank, maybe Dino knows the East Bank funding for the East Bank consolidation. I mean, if they have more funding, if they have surplus funds, and we have a shortage, can't we get some of their money? We all pay the same millage rate.
Well,
And I heard we don't have enough money, but if they got more money than they need,
you ever heard of the saying, go ahead and light the
some of that-
fire?
let's consolidate the taxes. Can we consolidate the taxes?
Do you want me to answer your question?
Okay, let me just bring one other thing, and you can have it. And as far as your computer model, as we all know, computers are a great tool, but garbage in, you get garbage out. So hopefully these couple of things will help you create a more accurate model, because we have visions, but the visions always don't turn out to reality. And so I hope these few things that I mentioned will help you. Thank you.
Just to quickly address the funding, so every fire district in Jefferson Parish now collects 25 mills, property tax, across the board. On the East Bank, property values are double what's on the West Bank. So they collect twice the dollars that you collect. But just as I said earlier, it's all about the vote of the people. I, as a councilman, do not have the legal authority to take dollars from a consolidated district on the East Bank and spend them on the West Bank and vice versa. It's not legal. So it would take a parish-wide vote. How many people live on the West Bank and how many people live on the East Bank? How do you think that would turn out?
So the river is that
The river's always been a barrier. It should be. I agree we should be one parish. But I live in a real world.
Can we vote on that?
Yeah, I agree. But, so I just want to tell you how that's structured.
So a follow-up, Consolidated West Bank Fire Station, district whatever, that has a lot more expensive houses, and they collected more tax dollars to support our firefighters than we do in Wagner. So we got older houses. Is the consolidation going to spread the money out evenly?
Yes, consolidation. If you, as the voters, it's not my decision, it's you, the voters' decision. Y'all voted to consolidate the entire West Bank, it's one pot of money. One pot, across the entire West Bank. There would be no more district lines, it's one pot. But we're a long way from that, there's nothing imminent, and that's y'all's decision, not mine.
Hi, good evening. My name is Pamela Parker. I'm a resident of the 7th District. And this gentleman hit on it. I live in Steeplechase. In Steeplechase, and one of the things I did not see on your study was the potential of growth. In Steeplechase, they're putting about 100 more houses in our subdivision. And then across the street from me in Glendella, they're putting another group of homes. When you go to Wagman, they're building another group of homes. So growth, according to your study, there were like 200 and some thousand residents. I forgot what the number was, 22,000, I think it was, of residents.
That seems right. I can look real quick.
No, that's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And
23,
that's
23
2023.
study.
Right,
But
absolutely.
since that study, we have grown and we continue to grow. And so my concern is with others is we don't have enough fire departments on our side. We don't have enough firefighting people in our area to do what we have to get done, because if you're going to consolidate like everyone else has said, someone's house is going to burn down. And God forbid it be mine or yours. And so, but what I want you to do is, in your study, what I did not see is a consideration of growth, residential growth. Because if you're going to consolidate, the numbers have to be in there that potentially will, because if you do your study today in 2025, I promise you that number of residents has gone up substantially. Substantially.
You're absolutely correct. So a study like this is a snapshot in time today. But I can tell you, if y'all all remember post-Katrina, what was coming to Avondale? Y'all remember the big subdivision that was supposed to come? We as a parish, we're going to tell them, look, if you're coming, you guys got to pay for a new fire station. Same thing, no different. So as development occurs, we as a parish have to look at that and say, okay, we have now X number of new homes, we need another fire station. So that is a future issue. Like I said, I'm trying to remember, maybe y'all can remember the name of the big development that was supposed to come to Avondale. We told them, if you're going to come, I think it was River Ranch, y'all going to come to Jefferson and build all these homes, you also have to pay for a fire station. So that was
Y'all though, what do you mean y'all?
the developer, yeah. Yeah, if you remember post-Katrina, they were going to build like 2,000 new homes back where the racetrack is and where the baseball fields are all going to go. That was all a big plan. They came to us, they complied to the parish, and one of the things we told them, look, there's one thing, you're going to do this, you're going to make all this money off our citizens, you got to chip in and pay for a new fire station. So that's a future issue.
And to your point, ma'am, you're absolutely right on track. When we did the study, and as the councilman just said, we did a snapshot in time, so we didn't have data to be able to analyze potential future growth. The key in if a consolidation would move forward, it's very, very dynamic, and all of that information, all of that stuff needs to come into the plan as decisions are made as to what is going to go forward. And that's why I urge slow, deliberate, analyze, let's make sure that we get this right, because there's pieces of information in 2 years since we looked at this that have changed. And so if we make decisions today based on just what I know, we're going to miss some stuff. So I appreciate you speaking about the growth aspect of it, because that's got to be an essential aspect of it as well.
And how y'all doing? My name is Mike Rishu. I'm a firefighter on the West Bank for 11 years. And it seems like the conversation is either will we Won't we? Can we? Can't we? But has there been any consideration by parish officials for possibly assisting West Bank departments pay their employees more efficiently or sufficiently through hourly wages or benefits packages, so we won't have to consolidate and we can make the job a little bit more attractive and bring those people in and not have the worries about manpower and where they're going to come from?
I'm afraid that's one I can't answer for you.
I'll answer that question unless one of my colleagues want to jump in. So 80% of all of Jefferson Parish's taxes are dedicated property taxes, 80%. In New Orleans, 80% is general fund. So they can move 80% around. We don't have that ability. You and the citizens of Jefferson Parish has always demanded we want to know what we're paying for. So I, as a council member, I can't take the 8th District's money and give it to the 7th District. I can't take sewage department money and give it to the water department. All of those are dedicated property taxes, so we're handcuffed. You as a taxpayer has always said, if we're gonna vote for a property tax millage, we wanna know where it's going and we want to dedicate it. All of our taxes are dedicated. Our general fund is 20%, and it's always running in a deficit because we gotta pay for the jail for that. The parish pays for the jail, not the sheriff, and we gotta pay for all these other expenses out of the general fund that just can't cover everything. It's always running a deficit. We're always having to cut back in the general fund. That's the simple answer. Everything's dedicated for a specific purpose.
How you doing? My name's Dennis Guidry. I'm a resident of the 7th District. I was in the fire service there for a number of years. I was in the Jefferson Parish Fire Department for a number of years. After roughly a 38-year career, I retired. So I have a lot of questions and some comments with regard to this. One, I think there's some need to define what our standard of care is going to be in Jefferson Parish. There's nothing nailed down anywhere. Every time I ask that question, nobody really has that answer. It should be 1710 and 1201. But there's a lot of things that are just, they drift away. It's usually left up to the usual and customary habits of what once was and that sort of thing. With regard to the 7th Fire District, now I'll throw a bunch of questions and throw it back to you. I noticed in the study that it indicated that the 7th District was a rural area. It's not. Half of the 7th District is lakes, wetlands, and as you guys put it in the study, unbuildable lands. So that is not in any way, shape, or form in any Census Bureau, OMB, or even an NFPA, which doesn't typically do classifications like that. Y'all have it listed as rural, and it's an urban area. So the classification for minimal staffing and response is going to change from whatever it was to 15 in 9 minutes, according to 1710. Outside of that,
You're talking about for a single-family residence?
yes, a
It's
2000.
It's 17 in 8 minutes.
Well, if you're using a ladder truck, yes,
Yes, otherwise it's 16.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I always figure in the ladder truck when I do my
Okay.
numbers.
outside of that, 3 stations, as that other gentleman put it, you can't get 16 from 9, no matter how hard you try. But we need to strive for those numbers. I'm going to say, go out on a limb here and mention some things, but I'm going to reserve that comment till I close here. But there's just a couple of things that kind of get under my skin with regard to this. I live down the street from the station that was closed, and I initially was told that it was closed because they can't run one guy in a fire truck, that they were going to move the station out, and they were going to run 2 guys or more from a further station. There's an absolute nexus between flashover and response time. If we get to response times that put us in flashover territory, It causes more property damage, more injuries, more fatalities, and more dangers to the firemen. And the 2 in, 2 out rule makes a lot of sense unless you're dealing with a pot on a stove fire, which then turns into an inferno if you don't get to it right away. But the reason that there's fire extinguishers in this building and every other commercial building in the country for the most part that's required by NFPA 1 and those sorts of codes is so the average person in here, some young lady in a skirt, can walk over there with a fire extinguisher and put the fire out while it's in its incipient stage. Is that not correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the further we put fire stations away, the more problems we're going to have and the closer we're going to get to that flashover curve. And as, in my opinion, the more we ride along that and rely upon that flashover curve, the more problematic things are going to get. I could probably go on about this for quite some time, but there's a lot more discussion that needs to be had in this. The fire station that was closed down near my house earlier this year, we just suffered our first fatality in 20 years. And there's photographs in this document with one firefighter standing there with a hose because the house is in full bloom. Now you try to fight an exposure fire with a 3-man fire truck. It's not going to happen. Try to employ 250 gallons a minute on each side of that house. That's going to be very difficult to do. So there's a lot of things that need to be looked at. Employing 3 stations in that district with regard to wherever those trucks outside of that are coming from. Just today, I drove a partial route, not even the full route. You can add another minute on it, but it was 12 minutes from where I went to Station 73, and that would be one of the responding units to a structure fire in my neighborhood. So that's not going to work. The other thing that I would say is that with regard to the fire service in Jefferson Parish, especially on the West Bank, we've been getting pretty much a free ride for a long time. So our employees that work there, we need to do whatever it takes to retain those guys and not let them keep jumping ship to other departments that have retirements and stuff like that, even if we need to buy into the state system for whatever that costs. It's a one-time cost. I'm sure that the parish officials can negotiate that. It's been done all over, even fire departments like Pearl River and Pankerville and Donaldsonville, those little bit, Bayou Cane, Bayou Blue, those are all paid fire departments that are in the system. They don't have near the money that we have, and they're rural, nothing like we are here. We're much more populated in those areas. So we need to figure out what the deal is, and that's the studies that really need to be looked at. The other thing is, one of the things I saw about the 9 Mile Point station that was closed is basically in your report that the station was in deplorable condition, possibly with black mold, and needs to be shut down. They shut it down, and then the house 2 doors away from mine burns and the guy dies in the house. That's a problem, especially when the response comes from further away with one guy on the truck. That's a liability. It's almost probably regarding gross negligence. We've got some problems in the parish in the fire service. We need to get them fixed. We need to get them fixed ASAP. I've met with the politicians, some of them, trying to get this worked out, trying to do it as gingerly as possible. Now it's in a public forum, so everybody knows about stuff like that now. It's not good. And in regard to volunteers, all of these fire departments years ago were formidable volunteer fire departments. And they had a lot of clout because when you went and kicked the anthill, the volunteers came out running, and those guys had political clout all over the parish because of it. The politicians were scared of them. Well, since then, we watered them down because, and I know I saw Ms. Shadland in here earlier, she wasn't the one that was in place when all this was done. I don't know what her position is on it now. But all the programs that kept the volunteers in place, pizza after a fire or meeting or something like that, Cokes, Gatorade, a crawfish ball here and there, awards programs and that sort of thing, have all been told you can't do that anymore. So that's why your volunteers are diminishing. And that's probably a trend that's going on around the state, because I think that same model has been employed by the IG in the state as well. But the state law says, revised statutes say that you can provide those things. So why are we telling our volunteers that we can't? So anyway, that's, I mean, I could go on for a long, long time with all of these things. I'm just pretty passionate about it, and I'm pretty aggravated with what's going on so far. But I'll turn it over to some other people, because I know we got limited time.
How y'all doing? I'm Clarence Lambert. I'm one of the guys that you was talking about. I'm all over. Originally from Bridge City. I'm the assistant chief there. I also work and volunteer at Westwego and work across the river in River Ridge. Westwego has one of the greatest volunteers, and that's what I want to hit on. Probably around still on the West Bank, because they're the biggest ones. And a lot of it may have to do with, because of what they do, they draw people, because they are very involved with the public and in their community. Some of the other departments don't have the funds and the means to do that. I think that's part of the issue. I think another part of the issue, and I could be wrong, I seen you talked about PIAL, and that's why I want to bring this up, is the stipulations and the requests that they put on the volunteers. It's the same as a paid person. I've been a volunteer for 20 years. I've been paid for 11. The reason why I became paid is because I'm sitting back thinking, why am I going to do this if I can get paid to do it? For one. But for two, I still volunteer now in my community because it's the way I was raised, what I believe in. And there's a lot of other people like that here. But they're being pushed away because of that rating, in my opinion. And I could be wrong. But when I look at your study and look at that, I think that has a lot of the problems that's coming with that study. Not so much of the money and where the stations are and everything else. It's the manpower. You said it yourself. That's the number one thing. And the volunteer was, the fire service was built on volunteer. Hundreds of years ago. And you need a way to keep that around, no matter what. You just said that too. No matter what, even if you consolidate, you still need that. I'm a volunteer until the day I die. But could that be one of the reasons? Is the rating, PIL? I guess is the question I'm trying to get to.
I think it's a great question. And I'm not, because I haven't looked at it, any answer I would give you would be 100% speculation. I would say possibly, but I wouldn't want to commit to that because I just don't know. It's not something that I've analyzed, and so I don't want to speculate.
Is there
but
anything else that we can do besides that, as far as getting rated for like other states, like ISO?
Well, most other states utilize the Insurance Services Office, or ISO, as their rating system. PIAL is affiliated, I think is the best word. They're affiliated in that they use some of the standards established by ISO to calculate their ratings, but then they have a whole nother scale that applies on top of that. And so it was very, very, very confusing for us as we started doing the work. We know what ISO is. We know what the numbers are going to do. And I will say it is impossible because we do it with ISO all the time. It is impossible to be able to predict what your insurance premiums are going to be based on an ISO classification. In fact, we know that anywhere between a 1 and a 4, 1 being the absolute best and 4 being pretty decent, any place between 1 and 4, your insurance rating is going to be your premiums are going to be probably pretty close. So we coach people all the time. Don't chase the rating because it doesn't really get you what you think it's going to get you. The challenge that we had in trying to calculate where we were going to be at with PIAL is that we couldn't get the information that we get from ISO so we can make the predictions that I just told you that I could get for a community what I was looking at from an ISO standard. So based on the fact we couldn't get them to give us that information, it's really tough for me to say, well, this impacts this or this impacts that or this is how the rating system is going to go because it's so very different than what the ISO model is. So I wish I could say you're dead on accurate or no, think about it from this perspective, but I just can't because of the challenges that we had in being able to collect some of that information. So I apologize. We tried really hard to figure it out, and it was hard.
I mean, I know that's one of the biggest things with volunteers, because I've been around for 20 years, is they want to volunteer to do everything the pay person's doing. And that volunteer still has a family, work, a life, everything else, you know? Like, if they try to stick around and be a part of that fire department, they can absolutely hurt them in a race. So now you have the board members, the chiefs, and the firefighters saying, you know, why is he here? He can't help us. He's not helping us. Now we're a class 4. We should be a class 1, or we want to be a class 1. So I just feel like that's a big issue with all of this. You know, it's a big involvement.
So
We looked at it hard, and I couldn't get the data out. They wouldn't give me the information.
I have a question. So how was it, what came about as to where you were going to start with the consolidation? Because from my understanding, one of them is the station on South Jamie and Avondale, which has 4 schools. It has a playground. It has business centers. There's a new sports complex. There's a speedway. How does it make sense to take away that response when it's not going to be the closest and there's going to be more population there?
Well, I think you got to look at it from, we're not taking away response. We're not trying to hurt you. We're not trying to close fire stations. What we're saying is that, okay, start someplace and start to analyze the process and start to put it together.
But why was that one of the ones that was going to be a start or a test when there's, like I said, 4 schools? I mean, there's a lot going on in that area where you're removing one of those first fire stations to see if it's going to work or not.
Well, we wouldn't remove that fire station unless we determined it was going to work. So there's no, if we said, okay, we're going to start off and we're going to consolidate the 7th district, we're going to start with those folks, we're not going to come in and say, okay, that fire station's gone. That would be, I would not coach the parish to do that. What I would say is we're going to start with the 7th district. You got good leadership. You got good organizations there. Let's see if we can start with those folks and try to put this together. And in that process, we say, okay, now let's all put all of the really smart people together in the room, and we say, what makes sense? And if it doesn't make sense, you don't do it. So you say, okay, well, if that doesn't make sense to close that fire station because we've got all of those things, then you don't touch it. You leave it alone. And you say, we're going to do something different. So and I've said it repeatedly over tonight, we created a model that we utilized data to drive. Now we need to take the brain power of the experienced smart folks, overlay that to ensure that we're making the right decisions. So it would be wrong to say, they're going to start on the 7th District, and we're going to close this fire station. That's going to be a problem for us. I don't know that they'll close that fire station. I don't know that that makes sense. We're not that far down the path yet.
So from my understanding, there's 6 and 7 you're going to close. There's 3 that were going to be consolidated. Are you going to do all 3 at one time, or are they going to do one at a time and see how that goes?
You're talking about the various fire companies in the 7th District? Is that what you're asking? I don't know that I've got that. I don't know that I've got that far in the process. I think the smart move would be, let's take 2 of them, and I'm thinking as we go here. I think what I would say is, let's take 2 of them. Let's figure out what we're doing here, folks, with an overlay in consultation with everybody else, and we say, okay, you 2, we're gonna put you 2 together, and then we'll get that right, and then we pull in the next department. I think that stair step. No, not at all. It's all rumors. Absolutely not. Zero conversation as it relates to that, and absolutely. And so, as I'm now, I'm a little bit afraid, that as I'm sitting here thinking about it, okay, well, how exactly would we make that work? That now the next thing we're going to get is a quote as to, well, this is how we're going to lay it out. I don't know. We need to get some smart folks in the room and say, what's the steps and what's the best way to do this to serve the community? So, yeah, we don't know that answer yet. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
I'm a resident in Wagman since '71. I'm on the board of the fire department. What concerns me is, I did a couple of time surveys myself today. I did the drive from the parking lot of Bridge City Fire Station to South Kenner Road at 35 miles an hour with no traffic. It's 12 and a half minutes. That's just the driving normal. We always have traffic, we always have train. We are unique to the 7th District because we're isolated and we're a long district. From Avondale Garden Road to the other side of Cornerstone is 5 miles. We've got 2 stations. I'm not saying they're in the right place, but we need 2 stations. Nowhere in here, a lot of your comments, I agree with everything you already, I had a lot to say, but you already said it all. I want to reiterate it. I don't want anything done that's going to hurt my constituents, reduce their service. I don't want anything that's going to hurt my firemen. We need to do something about their pay. There's no doubt about that. That has to be part of the tax, if we have to retax ourselves, or, hey, we got all these new $400,000 houses in Wagman, but we're not getting any more money, and we're running 2 stations with the same money as somebody has 1. There's something wrong with the whole system that has to be looked at. But if you can't improve the service, and you can't take care of my firemen, I don't want to. But I do believe in consolidation. Don and I talked about it. You can save on your insurance, you can save on your medicals and all that. That's all good things. We could reallocate the equipment, probably another good thing. But if you look at the areas, you really got to do a little more study. And I know all the chiefs that were talking about it. I trust Brian and all the things he says, but that's the secret. Some units, some areas, and I'm saying we're the only one, are unique. The other thing I want to throw another idea out. I haven't heard this one. There's certain areas, and Wagman being one of them, 95% of our calls are EMR. The other areas, like I would say Lafitte would be another one, and Gretna, you got to be starting to look at EMT service and those services. We charge just like they, because we always get in time delays. If I'm having a heart attack, and we got, like we said earlier, one truck went somewhere else, I'm dead. Or my house, I already had 2 houses burned in Wagman. So I really am interested in getting the service right. I don't want to go through the 3rd one. That's all I have. Thank you.
I will just say, if you're going to get into the EMS business, and I'm not telling you not that you shouldn't, but if you're going to get into the EMS business, we're talking about consolidation here. You need to enter into the EMS business with eyes wide open as to what that's going to turn into. And I will also say, if you're going to get in the EMS business, your fire station work that we've been doing here is going to look very different because of the call volume and those folks, we call it in the industry the overlapping calls. Your overlapping calls are going to be significant. So I led an organization for a really, really, really long time. It was fire-based EMS. We had cross-trained dual-role firefighter paramedics. I believe in the system, but that puts a whole different overlay over what it is that we're gonna do. Absolutely, and please hear me. I'm not saying don't do that, because I could certainly make the argument of why that would be a good move for the organization, but it will change. It will absolutely change how you do business. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for being here and presenting us with this presentation. It's a lot of information, a lot of great questions have been raised. Points have been made that you didn't even consider yet.
Absolutely.
Question being, is this the only meeting of this sort that we're going to be able to have before it is put to a vote by the public? The parish will get together and be able to speak with us again. Will you be investigating more based on the information that was given to you tonight?
Well, here's where I'm at as it relates to the work that we've done. The contract that we have with the parish is concluded tonight. We're happy to continue to work. We're happy to continue to. I mean, we know this information, so we're happy to do that. But it will take the parish will need to make some decisions as to what they want to do, how they want to move forward, additional meetings, and if they want me to do additional work, they just need to tell me to do additional work. But I just can't do that on my own. So to answer your question, will I always be here with you to work through this? My hope is the answer is yes.
So this is the final study that you're going to make?
No. As it relates to the work that I did here, I can modify that, I can change, I can adjust, we can do different things, and I think we need to continue to do that. And I think the smart move, if we're going to go forward, is that you continue to have the folks that did the work up front continue to do the work. But that's a decision that I can't make. I contracted to the board to do that. So it would have to be their decision as to whether they want me to do additional work for them.
So that was going to be in my wrap-up remarks. So,
beat you
anybody
to
else
it.
any questions? Y'all want me to wrap up? Wrap it up. All right. One more. Huh?
I got a couple minutes, you know.
Okay. You're a little premature. Just a little. Okay.
Hi, my name is Linda. I'm in the 7th District. Thank you very much for your presentation. I don't know a lot about the fire, how it goes, but I've been in Jefferson Parish my entire life. I know that this is going to go to the voters, which Dino said first. To go to a vote, we need to know exactly what's going to go on. I'm sure your studies were not cheap to do. I think what I've heard from everybody, the main thing is manpower. You need manpower. So Jefferson Parish needs to figure out how we're going to get more manpower, not shutting down more fire stations, because we're all too far as it is now. Our lives are very important. Like we lost a life on Oak Avenue because they shut us down. You know, we only have so many fire departments to get to us, and time is the most important thing. So I think the first thing we need to do is figure out, as a parish, how do we get more manpower? Volunteers is slim and none. I've been a volunteer for 50 years for a festival that shut down. You can't get volunteers because people have to work 2 jobs. My insurance went up because the state redid the zoning in where I live because I'm close to a bridge. My insurance went from $6,000 to $15,000, just homeowners, because I live in 70094. Same thing's going to happen when they rezone the fire departments. The first thing they ask me when I go for insurance companies, how far is your fire department from your home? So if I tell them it's now 5 miles, 10 miles, my insurance is going to go up. So us as taxpayers are going to be voting on this. We need more answers to what we're getting tonight. I appreciate what you're doing, but it's an old study. None of the numbers are adding up for where any of us live. So I don't think the problem is shutting down or consolidating. I think the problem is, how do we get more people to become firemen? How do we get more volunteers? That needs to be number one for Jefferson Parish.
I just had a statement more than a question. My name's Ann Lawler. I'm a citizen, of course, of Jefferson Parish, but I live in Westwego. But I'm here because I care about the firemen and the wonderful work they do. And my husband has been a lifetime member for 9 Mile. And yes, this study is very important. But as a citizen and a taxpayer of Jefferson Parish, I think we do need to realize, like everybody said, volunteers are diminishing. My fear is, in years to come, the firemen is going to diminish. And what happens when we don't? There's no attraction for their pay or their benefits. I think we need to look at that more than the fire station itself as the employee and attracting them, just like with the police. They're not paid for putting their lives on the line every day. Thank you.
So I'm a firefighter on the East Bank. I've been 23 years. I have a question about your projection. You're showing a basic, a class 2. What is the best? Does your study include the best? I understand, okay, this is a preliminary. This is where we would want to get to a class 2, the amount of personnel at these amount of stations. What is the best for
You're
Jefferson
talking about
Parish?
a PIAL?
Yes.
1 is the best classification.
Okay, so does your study show that? You showed the minimum of what we would be willing to do, or what is the?
I show you.
Does this include the best?
I show you what I know. Okay? I was unable, as hard as we tried, to get the cooperation needed from PIAL to be able to help us make calculations. And I understand it. They're a proprietary company, and they don't need to share that information with me. So we projected, based on the absolute best information we had, with the overlay of future staffing models of 3 folks on a rig, minimum 3 folks on a rig, et cetera. And we believe that that number gets us to we feel comfortable saying that number will get us to a 2. Do I think that with the model that we're talking about, that we probably would be a 1? I do. But I'm unwilling to say that in a written report because I don't have the facts to be able to make that calculation and say, if you do this, you get that. I'm not going to do that.
So based on the truck, the engines, the quint, the ladder truck, the amount of chiefs, is that based on the geographic of what you're saying of consolidating? This station closes down, this one remains open, this equipment goes here.
Yes, sir.
The maximum amount of manpower on each of the equipment, is that
Your
study doesn't show that?
I did not calculate it based on maximum manpower.
That's another pay study?
I calculated it based on minimum manpower.
Okay, that would be another study, if that, or that's, like you said, this is fluid?
I don't think you need to look at maximum manpower.
Okay.
You need to look at minimum manpower. What's
Okay.
your minimum staffing on a rig? You've got your float personnel or your backfill person, whatever it is you want to call them. They come in and they fill in for your leave time, your sick leave, your things like that. But if it's February and nobody's off on vacation, all of those folks are here. All of a sudden, your rig staffing goes from minimum staffing to 3 to a lot of them are going to have 4 folks on them, and so that is your maximum staffing potential. What I don't ever want to do is make a prediction based on maximum staffing. I always want to make a prediction based on minimum staffing so that I can actually say this is what you're going to get at full vacation time with folks being off. And so that's how we generated our number. But know full well, there may be some days that you got some additional folks hanging around. if that makes sense. And if and when you work in where you work, you know you got your backfill guys that are gonna float in and cover for them.
And I just got one more. I hope this is quick. Is there anything in your study? I didn't really see it. There was one that showed a bunch of numbers and it kind of went past quickly. I heard you say that it was going to be online. The employees. So is in your study show the potential or what the future West Bank Consolidated Fire Department, does it show what the employee would be making in salary?
No.
What would their health insurance cost? Does any of that show in your study?
Here's the challenge that you've got and why we didn't do it. That would be a compensation study. So you're looking at what's going to be your compensation, what's going to be your benefits, how much, and it gets into all different things. The compensation study looks at how much leave time do you have, and do you have Kelly days, or all of that kind of stuff. If I did a compensation study not knowing whether or not we were going to have an organization with 200 firefighters, and I said, okay, well let's just say we consolidated the 7th district, everybody else stayed out, and we got 70 firefighters. I'm gonna get information, but that's gonna be a very different number than what it's gonna be if I do a study based on 200 firefighters, because of who I'm comparing against. If I'm saying, okay, well, you guys say, okay, we think we should look at consolidation, we want to move forward. They come back and they say, can you do a comp study for us? And we say, okay, well, if we're going to consolidate them all as we've planned out, we're looking at a 200-member organization who looks like us, who operates like us, who has the same number of personnel, and then you look to those organizations to build your comp study. So I can't build you a comp study until I know what numbers I'm going to apply as it relates to that staffing level, so that I can actually compare against I can compare apples to apples versus apples to oranges, because what will occur is that if I just did a comp study today and used, as my example of the 7th district, I'm going to have a number that is way lower than what he needs. And then we put them all together, and he's going to come back and he's going to be like, man, you really missed this. And that was because I used the wrong data. So we can't do it until we kind of know what direction they want to go. Does that make sense to you?
One more question, and we're going to wrap up. One more question, we're going to wrap up.
I just have one simple question. This study was paid for by the parish, correct? So the funds that was paid for the study, did it come out the West Bank Fire Station's funds, or was that something the council put on?
Came out of each department's fund, Jess.
Okay, let me ask you this. Did each department get a vote on or say so that they were gonna allocate that money for this study?
No, it didn't come out of your budgets. It came out of the funds, which is the council budgets monies for. Yes.
All right, so if we gotta modify this study or something else, so that's more funds we putting out.
Possibly, yes.
Why can't we just sit with even Mr. Don? He's a really good man. I give him hell every day, but he's okay. Why can't we sit with just the chiefs and try to work something out?
Again, if y'all would let me wrap up, we can get there.
But we want to, I thought you were feeding us tonight too. Where's our sandwiches,
Don's
our coffee?
Don's taking y'all all to Red Maple afterwards. Drinks are on him.
He's paying for it.
He's paying.
With his own card.
Yes.
Don, your boss spoke.
First, thank y'all, everybody, for being here tonight. Look, this is not just an important issue for me, but it's an emotional issue. It's our public safety. And that's why we got to get this right. You heard over and over again, this is a 3 to 5 year process. The worst thing we can do is rush to judgment and put everyone's public safety at risk, and that's not going to happen. We're going to do as many meetings as it takes to get everybody on board and understand what's going on. The next step in this process is to ask for your comments and questions. I told the chiefs that, so you can email don.robertson@jeffparish.gov, your questions and comments, concerns about this study. We're going to sit with the chiefs, we're going to sit with our consultants, and make changes to this original study to to reflect that. But that's just a starting point. That is not a final plan. We are nowhere near close to a final plan. I've said that over and over again. Long-term process. Cost is not something I can tell you today until we get with the chiefs and figure out how many stations and how many trucks and how many men we have. Then we can start coming to a cost. I can tell you this with a lot of confidence. It'll be a lot more than what we pay today. But that's you as the voters to decide, not me. You guys have to decide that. But those gentlemen in the white shirts in the back are a key part of this process. Going forward, it's going to involve them throughout the entire process to work on these numbers. As Chief Hegg said, just because he recommended closing one station doesn't mean we, the parish, are going to do that, because we understand the intricacies of our local neighborhoods. We know about railroad tracks and bridges and all the other things associated with it, and that's why those guys back there are so important. So that's the next step in this process going forward. Long term, we're going to come back with the next phase of these recommendations, and strict, I understand, it is a recommendation. There's nothing in concrete. I can't make the decision. Only you, the voters, can. Look, I took this on because it's important. This was my initiative, because I know this is coming. Y'all don't see anybody else standing up here with me, do you? Nobody's here with me. But I'm here because leaders take on controversial issues head on. I don't hide from controversies. I tackle them head on with your cooperation and with their cooperation. And I'm going to be with y'all throughout this process. I'm just not going to go away. We have to find solutions. And we need to work together to do that. So, again, this whole presentation will be on the parish website tomorrow. Email Don your comments, questions, or concerns, and we're going to work with the chief. I can't tell whether it's 30 days, 60 days, 120 days to get to the next iteration of this, and we're going to do this all over again. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So this was important for me to have this meeting tonight. Some people say, why are you doing this so soon? Maybe y'all need to adjust this. I want to hear from you guys. Before we go any further, I want to hear from you guys. Well, you need a starting point. You need the data. I need the data. You need the data. So without the data, what are we talking about? Well, it's not really out of date, because it's still the number of stations, it's still the number of trucks, it's still the man, that's all relevant. Don.Robertson@Jeff, not Jefferson, jeffparish.gov. And if you don't remember that tonight, just call my office and we'll give it to you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.